So we're facing a midlife crisis in community associations, and right now we're saying you have a choice. You can choose to go one way and say, guess what? We're going to look at our place differently. We're going to maintain the community association, the common areas. We're going to collect assessments. We're going to enforce the rules, and we're going to live happily ever after. Or we have a choice saying, guess what? This is not going to work. We got to go for plan B. Plan B, maybe have to disband, deconvert the place. But your option should never be to do nothing. And in one word, please, you have to make a decision, a choice to move forward.
HOA Insights, common sense for common areas, exists to help all 2 million volunteer board members nationwide have the right information at the right time to make the right decisions for their future. This podcast is sponsored by 4 companies that care about board members: Association Insights and Marketplace, Association Reserves, Community Financials, and Kevin Davis Insurance Services. You'll find links to their websites and social media in the show notes.
To celebrate your support for our show, I've got a fun announcement to share. HOA Insights now has its very own merch store. Our team has whipped up some hats, mugs, t-shirts, and more that we think volunteer HOA board members are gonna love. We also offer dozens of free Zoom backgrounds. If your board is meeting online, these fun Zoom backgrounds are a must. Check out the HOA board member merch shop at boardheroes.selfie.store, and that's boardheroes.sellfy.store, or just use the link provided in the show notes. Well, hi, I'm Robert Nordlund of Association Reserves.
And I'm Kevin Davis of Kevin Davis Insurance Services, and this is HO Insights, where we promote common sense
for common areas. Well, welcome to episode 59, where, as you heard, we'll be speaking with insurance expert and regular co-host Kevin Davis about what board members should expect on a big picture level about the future of your association. Before we get going, I want to encourage everyone to check out last week's episode number 58, a very important discussion with Kevin about what you can do to control your rising insurance costs. There are some very cost-effective actions that you can take that Kevin describes in the podcast. Applying what you learned in that episode will potentially save your association a lot of money. And I think we learned there's money to be saved when you do the right things. Well, if you want to catch that episode or any prior episode, you can listen from our podcast website, www.hoainsights.org, or watch the podcast from our YouTube channel. You'll find a link to that in the show notes. Or, of course, you can subscribe to the podcast from any of the most popular podcast platforms to get every episode delivered right to your phone or mobile device. Now, on the topic of episodes, we are going to do another live stream program for upcoming episode number 61 on July 8th. It'll be an Ask Me Anything episode with myself, Kevin, and Julie at your service. We'll be on the program to answer your questions, so mark your calendars for 3 p.m. Pacific time on July 8th to see how fast we can think on our feet. We'll click on the YouTube link in the show notes below to visit the live podcast YouTube page and click on the Notify Me button to make sure you get notified when the podcast is about to begin. Now, as we regularly do, we're going to start this episode with an audience question. So if you have a hot topic, a crazy story, or a question you'd like us to address in an upcoming episode, leave us a comment on one of our YouTube videos. Leave a voicemail message at 805-203-3130, or send us an email at podcast@reservestudy.com. So Kevin, Sarah from Chicago asked, our association is getting older, and it seems to be getting more and more expensive to insure and maintain. Is it going to just get worse? Kevin, I kind of feel the pain in that, but what do we tell Sarah and other board members who at this time are aware, they're listening, the ones who are concerned about the future of their older association? What do we say?
Well, first of all, I'm an optimistic person, so I will say things will get better. And I think they'll get better because we will become more educated. We will learn more, and we will learn how to manage these community associations a little bit better so we can enjoy them a little bit more, and it increase the value of our unit. Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that our unit is increased, our value is increased, and we enjoy living in there. So if that's our end game, eventually that's where we want to be. So will they no longer exist? No. I think they will always be around. First of all, it's probably the most effective way to live these days, because we are community people. We want to bond with one another. We want to connect with each other, just not today.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. Everywhere I look, I see that community associations are a reality in the real estate industry. That's just the cost-effective way to build homes in places where the real estate is expensive. And I think there's an opportunity there. I hear so much about how we are becoming disassociated as a people. We have less real friends and more online friends, things like that. And the opportunity exists at a community association to have a neighbor, whether that's the next home or the people on either side of you. I remember when we were remodeling our home, we lived in a condo for a year and a half or 2 years. And it was a pleasure. I saw my neighbor every Tuesday as we pulled our garbage cans in, and he was a nice man, and I was chatted about how he washed his garbage cans out, and it was just a relationship that I never would have had, and just the opportunity to smile and be neighborly. So community associations are here. They're here to stay. I think
And we'll
they are
get
going to
back to
get,
that, Robert. We'll get
yeah,
back to that. And that's the key thing, is that as we get back to that communal living, that we live together and we look forward to seeing our neighbors, things will get better. And I think that's the future. However, we got to get there. And I think one of the keys is recognizing that it is an effective way to live. That as you build these community associations, the state, the city, your county you live in, guess what? They get a chance to take a step back and allow you to say, this is how we're going to live. This is how we're going to collect our trash. This is how we're going to maintain it. And guess what? You have that authority to do it. And the question is that can you use that authority correctly? And that's kind of the issue in terms of community associations. You have volunteer board members whose job is to maintain the property, enforce the rules, collect assessments. As long as they do those three things correctly, again, we think that there will be a future for these community association lifestyles, or the way of life, or whatever you want to call it.
I'm writing down those three things: volunteer board members, ruling effectively, collect assessments.
Yeah.
Did that go too
collect
quick?
assessments, enforce the rules, and maintain the association. I mean, there's three simple things that these board directors can do to really help the longevity of a community association. Especially today when you talk about these age communities, these communities that have been around for 30 years now. And a lot of them have been. And what happened is that most association board members took their eye off the ball somewhere along the line. And you have all these issues that have impacted them because they took the eye off the ball. And the number one thing, I guess, Robert, the number one thing is deferred maintenance. That's the big red flag.
That's what I was going to say, because Mother Nature and Father Time, they are inevitable, unstoppable forces. And I was wondering, wasn't sure where this is going to go conversation-wise, but I was thinking a little bit that I wonder if our industry, the community association industry, is having almost a growth phase where it's adjusting to being almost like a teenager, because it's in existence, it's there, it's part of real estate. And now we're getting board members who need to fully appreciate that this is here to stay. And we need to start managing well. And just like you say, maintaining the place. You can't be like a absentee landlord and just cross your fingers and hope. You have to appreciate that you have forces of destruction that are every day working on your association, and you've got to keep up. So that proactive aspect of it, maintaining it as a community, we stand for this. We are not going to stand for a loud party in the pool at 2 a.m. Just be a community.
Here's an idea that when we attended the CAI conference, they said it is a midlife crisis, and that's what's happening right now. That's it. It's the midlife crisis in the community association. I remember when I had my midlife crisis. Oh, what I'm going to do? What's going to happen? And I ended up starting my own business and ended up going in a whole different direction. And again, we go through these things, and we have a choice. We can go one way or the other. We say, okay, I'm going to make a change. I'm going to be better. I'm going to do things differently. Guess what? Then all of a sudden, things work out for you. And for community associations, the same thing. They're going through these midlife crises, and you got to make a choice to say, guess what? We're going to make a difference. We're going to be better than the association down the street there.
Yeah.
We're going to do things more so that we can enjoy where we're living, and our property values will increase. So all of a sudden, we think that way. guess what? Now we have a future.
Yep. Yeah, it is going to get expensive, but let's pull up our big boy pants, pull up our big girl pants, and take good care of the place and ride the property values up. Because if we do nothing, the property values are going to go down, or they're going to lag, and the minor expenses are going to turn into major expenses, and it's just going to get way more expensive.
But look at us now. Just us right now, we look at ourselves. It costs a lot more to maintain our bodies, right, than it did before. When I was in my mid-40s, I didn't have to worry about going to the doctor. I didn't have to worry about, doing 5 miles a day. Now in my 60s, guess what? I got a lot more things to worry about. I got to make sure I get out there and do my 10,000 steps.
Yeah.
I got to make sure I see my doctors and my specialists. So it costs me a lot more to maintain my body than it did 20, 30 years ago. And the same thing for community association, costs them more than it did 30 years ago, but they still haven't accepted it. They still say, let's maintain those assessments the way they have been. Why are we going to increase the assessments?
Yeah, you can't do that. You can't be living in the past. There was a friend of mine who he went to Las Vegas, and he was saying that I used to be able to do that for an entire weekend, and now one night in Las Vegas and I'm done. We have to adjust to the new normal of what the community association is. There's higher expectations in the industry. There's more resources. And then we have this podcast. And so we're able to reach out and touch so many more people than we ever would have in the past, when you had to drive to go hear a presentation and park and take a big chunk of time out of your day. Now we're dropping right into people's ears and be able to encourage them and say, hey, folks, let's take a hold of this and ride the tide forward, and not just get slapped in the face when it takes us somewhere that we don't want to go.
And that's the key thing, is that, we're having a more informed board members, and that more informed board members are allowed to make better decisions. Now, if they choose to or not is one thing, but we're giving them the information to say, guess what? I like what I just heard. I'm going to have a more informed board of directors, because by having a more informed board of directors, we're going to make better decisions. So that when it comes time to make sure those documents are enforced the way they should be enforced, now I know the importance of it. Because I don't enforce them correctly, guess what's going to happen? We have disgruntled people who live here, we have more lawsuits, and guess what? The value of my unit will diminish. And again, what do I want more than anything else? I want to be able to live in a place where I can look at the people who live here and feel pretty good about it, but I also want to make sure the value of my unit increases. I mean, that's so important to me.
Yeah. Well, we said safe and secure home, peaceful and productive community, things like that now roll off our tongues. That takes some work. Takes a proactive board who understands that being a board member is hard work, and so you want to get committees who then can come and replace you, and you want to get volunteers who can be on the committees to get onto the board. All this thing about developing a healthy community, but there's now more information out there. I think there's managers that have credentials that you can look at. You don't have to hire just cross your fingers and hope to be lucky. There's attorneys who are specialists in community associations. There's reserve study providers. There's insurance agents, insurance professionals who have credentials for community associations. There's so many more resources and opportunities to do well for your association, that this is what we want to encourage the boards to think, that yes, it's going to take some work, but boy, the payoff is nice.
And again, like our midlife crisis that we go through, we have a choice. We can go and go down this rabbit hole and say, uh-oh, the world's going to end. It's the worst place in the world. Or we can say, you know what? I want to make a difference. And by making a difference and serving those board of directors, okay, and enforcing the rules correctly, okay, maintaining association correctly, collecting the assessments, raising the assessments, doing the thing that we should do so that we can have a better place to live, guess what's going to happen? There will be a future for community associations.
Yeah, and not just community associations in general, but community associations, your community association. And you talked about it in the last episode about looking around your association critically. How would I think of this association if I was Mrs. Smith, the elderly lady in unit number 13 who walks with a walker? Boy, yeah, we need to take good care of our sidewalks for her. How do we make this an inviting place for the people with dogs? Well, hey, we should put up a pet waste station. All these little things that you can do to build community and to take care of your association. And Well, we did it a few years ago with having online meetings so we could still run the business of the association without sneezing and coughing on each other, all those kinds of things. So, yeah, there's a lot of
Also, it's one more thing too. You talked about the lady with the walker. Guess what? We've all been living there for 30 years. So we all will have walkers, so we have to be able to appreciate the fact that it's not just her. These associations are 30 years old now. A lot have been living there for 25, 30 years. And guess what? We start out at 40. Now we're approaching our 70s or in our 70s. And so we have to be aware too that that's us next. We're the ones going to be using the walkers and the wheelchairs. And so we want to make sure that everything is really running a lot smoother. So we do, again, as that midlife crisis starting here, we have to make sure we're prepared for the midlife crisis. So we're doing the thing necessary so that, 10 years now when the association, because most have been living there for 20 plus years, now we're prepared for this next phase that we've all been going through together. So we got to make sure that we understand that, the things are more important in terms of overhanging trees and the dead trees and that are blocking the stop sign. Because now we want people to see these signs so that they're aware that people are in here that maybe move a little bit slower than they used to be able to move. Not as fast as they used to be able to do.
Or you've been there 25 years, and so there's a stop sign there, so you don't think about it. But when you are helping your nephew or your neighbor drive for the first time, you say, get ready for the stop sign. They say, why? And you realize, oh, yeah, the tree's overgrown it or the bush has overgrown it and no one can see it. And just that fresh eye. I guess I come back to something that's near and dear to board members' hearts, and that's money. It costs money to take care of the association. And getting back to the midlife crisis, I bought a red sports car a few years ago, and it cost money. Boy, does it put a smile on my face. And surprisingly, it puts a smile on my wife's face. And she said, it's okay if you buy a red car. I just don't want to hear about a red head. And that was our funny joke. But it takes money. But then again, the money that it costs to maintain the association is going to come back. But you need to have that idea that 25 years ago, the assessments were the assessments back then. The property needs more money right now. And so we've got to give it the money it needs. Just like you and I are probably having more doctor's appointments now than we used to.
Sure.
All those kinds of things. The association needs more money. But boy, if you take good care of it, it's going to reward you with higher property values. And that's a nice payoff. And then with the roof that's intact, the tree that's trimmed or removed when it gets old and no good, those are the kind of things that are going to reward you with strong property values.
And one thing that's simple you haven't talked about is just having reserve study as a plan to make sure that everything's maintained. And that's a simple mechanism there to say, my job's a lot easier now because I have to worry about how long I have to worry about that roof. I have to worry about certain things because I have a reserve study here that outlines what I need to do. And guess what? It has made my job so much easier. There are a lot of tools out there to make these board of directors' job a little bit easier so that they don't have to look and go, oh, what do I do now? How do I handle this stuff? And then, you said it earlier, hope that things get better.
Yep. Hoping is not a plan. Two thoughts from that. One is that when I initially became the president of my association, the treasurer told me, well, welcome to the board, but that the roof is leaking. We need to paint the place and the asphalt needs care. And we have, a couple $1,000s in reserves. I'm like, oh, geez Louise, what did I get myself into? Things take money and we have to be prepared. And that's what launched me in the reserve study field because we needed a plan. And then related to that is, yes, it does cost money, but with respect to that midlife adjustment, there are going to be some people that are going to get priced out of the association. Yeah, perhaps they've been there for 25 years. And I think the kind thing to do is let them know every year it's costing a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more to live here. And so they have the control. They have the opportunity to make their decision about when they choose to sell and move to less expensive housing. Because maybe they don't need a 3-bedroom anymore. Maybe they would best go and live with their grandkids down the street from their grandkids in a different town. But we have to appreciate change as part of the aging process. I think that's something that our listeners need to be reminded of.
And I'm glad you said that because most of the decisions that a lot of these condo boards make, especially the elderly one, the 30 plus years, it's to do nothing. Their plan is to do nothing. And do nothing is a choice. To do nothing is a choice. And a lot of them choose to do nothing. And then they look at something 30 years later, and they go in their garage and they see things start to peel, things start to come apart. And they keep looking at it, and they still choose not to do anything about it. They choose to maybe get a reserve study done, but guess what happens after the reserve study is done? They say, well, we're going to start investing in it, next year or the year after that.
Yeah.
Or then they start investing in it, but no, we will keep the reserves set aside in the bank and not do anything with it. So it is incumbent upon them to make decisions to do something. No decision is a decision.
Kevin, I'm looking at the time, and we're way past time to do our midpoint sponsor ad. So let's take a quick break right now. We'll be right back after a quick break to hear from one of our sponsors.
Are you part of a homeowners association or condominium board? Making the right financial decisions for your community's future is crucial. At Association Reserves, we're proud to serve communities nationwide, specializing in reserve studies tailored to your community's unique needs. Our expert team helps you accurately assess your property's assets, forecast future expenses, and develop a solid funding plan. Whether you're a small HOA or a large condominium association, we've got you covered. Visit reservestudy.com to learn more and get a proposal for your association.
And we're back. Kevin, we were talking about the choices that board members have, and we're trying to encourage board members to make the choices. I have some clients that we have for years recommended it's time to replace the carpet, and they just don't see it because they see familiar carpet. I see faded carpet. I see worn carpet, and they just don't see it because they've become so familiar with it. And we need to encourage change. Change is normal. Change is the appropriate response to an aging association. But I think we need to touch on one more thing, and you started with it at the very beginning, saying the danger of no change. And if you've taken your eye off the ball, and now that you look around, if you take a walk around your association, you see a lot of advanced deterioration, and you realize, gee, the elevator's been limping along, the carpet, the hallways are all tired, the boiler needs to be replaced, we still have a key entry system. We don't even have a telephone system or a video system. We missed a couple of generations of upgrading our entry access. What do we do?
Yeah.
Or what is possible? I think we need to touch on that subject.
Yeah, you know what? Some of the things we've talked about in the past is that you have money issues. You can't get enough special assessment out there. I mean, there's not enough money. You have deferred maintenance for 30 years. I would say the first thing is you got to see if you can borrow money. I mean, you got to go to the bank and see if you get money out of there. And if you can't get money, it's okay to say, maybe it's time to disband our association. I mean, we have to be realistic enough to be able to say something that nobody ever talks about, Robert. And it's time to start talking about a little bit more. You've been living in a place for 25, 30 years. And this place is 35 years old, and you took your eye off the ball. Sometimes you got to say, guess what? We have to disband the association. Find a developer to come in and says, guess what? We'll convert this into apartments, because guess what? Millennials and Gen Z love apartments.
Yeah. And it may be a tired old building. It may be your wonderful tired old building, but it may be a tired old building. And if you're facing a $50,000 per unit special assessment to get it freshened up, to get it fixed up, the plumbing, all the things that need to get done. Yeah, we heard this at the latest conference, the idea of deconversion, disbanding the association. And I feel it's a little bit like the emergency procedure. When you get onto an airplane, the flight attendants tell you what happens in case of an emergency. Well, if you haven't taken good care of the place and you realize that we are out of control here, it's just economically good old Riverview villas. You can't see the river anymore because all the trees have overgrown, and you can't go back there because the hillside is slipping and the roof leaks.
And the lake's no longer any good. The lake, you can't do anything with the lake.
Yeah.
Then you need to dredge it. Millions of dollars to dredge the lake. Sometimes you got to be realistic enough to say, you know what, this is not going to work. We can't. Our expectations are too high at this point in time. Like the 80-year-old lady or the lady with the walker. It's like, she can't go, dive out of the airplane anymore. Certain things she can't do anymore. And sometimes you got to face the realities that, okay, this is not going to work under these conditions, and we got to really do something more drastic. And again, the whole topic of this conversation we're having is the future of community associations. One of the futures is a plan B. Be able to say, guess what? this is not going to work for us anymore. A deconversion is possible, to find a developer to say, you know what, there's apartment buildings all along here. Maybe there should be an apartment building and no longer a condominium association.
Yeah, a nice, fresh apartment building, and some developer is looking at your plot of land and saying, just drooling, thinking what they can do with that plot of land. So we want to be encouraging board members to appreciate that community associations are here to stay. They are perhaps built on the backs of volunteer board members, expecting that the volunteer board members are going to make good decisions, wise decisions, effective decisions. We talked about expecting change, making sure that you are not just sitting on your hands and doing nothing, but the opportunity to pull that emergency exit if you need to, and that is deconversion. I think we're going to see more and more of that as we have more associations aging out and finding out that they were caught. They were caught with their eye off the ball. But just interesting things. Community associations are here to stay, I believe.
And they should. They should.
But not necessarily every community association. Yeah. There perhaps are some old and tired ones where it may be more cost effective to say, we're out, we're done, and get your money from the developer than it is to pass that $50,000, $100,000 special assessment and try to yourself make it a better version of what it was or what it used to be.
So we're facing a midlife crisis in community associations, and right now we're saying you have a choice. You can choose to go one way and say, guess what? We're going to look at our place differently. We're going to maintain the community association, the common areas. We're going to collect assessments. We're going to enforce the rules, and we're going to live happily ever after. Or we have a choice saying, guess what? This is not going to work. We got to go for plan B. Plan B, maybe have to disband, deconvert the place. But your option should never be to do nothing. And in one word, please, you have to make a decision, a choice to move forward.
Yeah, move forward. And that means getting fresh blood on the board, raising assessments, all those kinds of things. It's just normal to be in a state of change. Well, Kevin, as always, it's great talking with you. Any closing thoughts to wrap up those three things?
Those three things. Yeah. You have to make sure you maintain that association. Nothing more important than that. Collect assessments, but make sure they're up to date and enforce the documents. If you do those three things there, you will have a great community association, and they will be around long after we won't be around.
Yeah, it stands the test of time. We hope you learned some HOA insights from our discussion today that helps you bring common sense to your common area. Remember to mark your calendar for July 8, our Ask Me Anything live cast. Check the show notes for details on how to sign up. We look forward to having you join us for another great episode next week.
You've been listening to HOA Insights, common sense for common areas. You can listen to the show on our podcast website, hoainsights.org, or subscribe on any of the most popular podcast platforms. You can also watch the show on our YouTube channel. Check the show notes for helpful links. If you like the show and want to support the work we do, you can do so in a number of ways. The most important thing that you can do is engage in the conversation. Leave a question in the comment section on our YouTube videos. You can also email your questions or voice memos to podcast@reservestudy.com or leave us a voicemail at 805-203-3130. If you gain any insights from the show, please do us a huge favor by sharing the show with other board members that you know. You can also support us by supporting the brands that support this program. Please remember that the views and opinions expressed by the podcast do not constitute legal advice. You'll want to consult your own legal counsel before making any important decisions. Finally, this podcast was expertly mixed and mastered by Stokelight Video and Marketing. With Stokelight on your team, you'll reach more customers with marketing expertise that inspires action. See the show notes to connect with Stokelight.